jolly good morning to you. Welcome to Reloved Guitars Workshop. This is Sam. We're in Devon, in glorious United Kingdom, and it's sunny outside, so spring is on its way, even though it's still January. Now my plans for today have changed. I was intending to finish Doug's what's that guitar? Ibanez Art Core semi-acoustic, but I've just discovered I don't have any 10s in string department, so I need to order those in, which will be a delay. So it won't take too long, but meanwhile I better get on with some other things in that case. And here's the first one. I'm just going to plug it in and see how it sounds. This is Mike's Ibanez S series. No, it's an SA series guitar. It's probably got some big long number on the back, which if I look on the back of the headstock, it will tell me it's a maybe that's a serial number, W9313. Yeah, serial number. So it's an SA series. It's probably, it has the oblique plug, and I don't know what exactly the kind of pickups are on here, but they're probably the INF, or maybe they're not, I don't know. But anyway, so let's have a listen. Not perfectly in tune, but okay for now. I'm going to take off my watch because that always gets in the way, including my wedding ring. Can't really play very well with those on, but hey, can't play very well without them on, I mean with them off. So this is a guitar that has fairly dead strings on it. Makes a sort of elastic band type of noise, which is quite cool. But in fact, if it's a sort of sound that you could, if you really wanted it, you could only get with old strings. So there's a little tip. If you like that rubber band sound, just leave a set of strings on for about a year and then come back to it. Okay, so what have we got? We've got the S series Ibanez, which is a very pretty looking guitar. It's very thin in the body, and it has the rounded off neck heel access point here, which is really nice. It's kind of a nice, slightly chamfered shape, beautiful flame colour, orange, absolutely divine. 5-way switch, HSS configuration, and a Ibanez what's the word, proprietary bridge system here, which doesn't have a tremolo with it, but I can bend it either way. But it's in equilibrium at the moment, and that's what we'll be aiming for when we set this up anyway. Don't know how dependable this tuning is, or how much stretch there are in the strings even. Now I'm not sure. I can just double check what strings Mike has got on here. Lovely, out of tune. On that. Bit ropey there, so it could do with a bit of contact cleaner, but anyway. So, not helped by the strings. Nice guitar. unlike the other, I had a S521, which was mahogany, oiled mahogany looking thing, which was also very beautiful. And I think that had a fixed hardtail bridge, but the problem with that is that it was definitely neck heavy. This manages to just about avoid that, and I'm really pleased to see that. I haven't handled one of these before, but this puts it back into the realms of a guitar that I'd quite like to have, because it hangs there nicely. This is a webbing strap. There's nothing particularly unusual in its grippy qualities, but it's hanging there without moving nicely. So. It's a nice feeling guitar. It has the 2-point tremolo anchor, and I was explaining to my missus this morning why, I guess what the inherent problem is with these is that if you think about both these units here, the pickup and the tremolo block, both of these parts have a cutout in the body, obviously, for them to go through. The pickup sits in a cutout, and so does the tremolo block. Which means that this little strip of wood in between on some guitars is more or less thick. So, but there's always this bridge of wood into which these two things sit in some sort of bushing, which you can see just sits here as a kind of metal bushing with a screw thread in it. And on this it looks in good nick, but on a lot of guitars, you think about the pressure that's under. It's under a forward pull from the strings, and it's also under a forward pull from the other side from the springs, which means that these 2 points are loaded very heavily no matter what you do, unless you literally block this thing off, in which case you're still subject to the pull of the strings. You may have cancelled out the spring pull, but you're still going to be subject to the forward pull, and that just loads these. Now on this guitar it looks a sensible construction, and actually if I look at the width of the wood bridge, if you like, the walkway, it's probably 3/4 of an inch, whereas on other guitars I've seen it can be as little as a centimetre, and then when you get down to that size, then you're likely to have these bushes loaded so much that little wooden bridge snaps or splits, and then this whole thing starts to move forward. And that's actually what happened on Matthias's Funkadelicaster, the Japanese Fender, which I later filled with oak, cut out the broken bushing parts, filled it with oak, and then did it as a hardtail. Just recently sold it to Rob. Now this looks in good nick, but it seems to be sort of an inherent weakness when you have a 2-point thing and you've got a cavity here and a cavity there, and it's kind of inevitable that you're going to get a small strip of wood under enormous pressure loads. But this is in good nick. Looking at it all round, it has some fretwear, little grooves down here from quite a bit of playing, but it's in nice condition, and it's a bolt-on neck, which means it will be quite flexible in terms of responsiveness to the truss rod adjustment. I did a little check earlier on. There's practically almost no, it's not true, there's a fraction of neck relief. Doesn't really matter because the action is quite high. Just give you an idea, or give myself an idea. Oh blimey, the action is high. That's 3.1 millimeters. For this kind of guitar, that's way high. So 3.1 millimeters at low E. Let's see what it is on the high E. Let's get it the right way round. It's 2.5. 2.5 low E. 2.5 millimeters low E. And the other thing that matters muchly to me, I know that I'd like a little bit more relief in the neck than that. Not massively more, but enough more. Very spinal tap. I'm just going to check and see what we've got on the... So it's not... Oh yeah, okay. So that's 0.7 of a millimetre. Let's go and find 0.8 and see if it still plays. So it's higher than I'd like it over the first fret. That's the point. And there's lots of room we can recover from there to make it play easier. Right, so it's 0.7. I'll just jot this down also for my memory 0.7 millimeters at first fret, and I would say in terms of relief, clang, that's how it should play. Ooh, lovely and low. Anyway, relief on the on here at the 8th fret, I'd say that's sub 0.1. We can't get any smaller than that, so we've got 0.05. Actually, we have. It's practically, it's like a piece of foil. So difficulty getting this under here. Yeah, 0.15, something like that, which is a little bit lower than I'd like. 0.15 millimeters relief. There we go, there's my starting measurement. So the first thing I know is that there's a fair chunk of action improvement that I can do in respect of the playing action down here. Also there's a fair bit, there's about 0.3 or actually 0.4 improvement down here to make this easier and less prone to intonation errors. Actually, it's these bottom two strings that are going to be prone to going sharp because of the height over the first fret. And to set this up, there's a couple of ways we can do it. It's interesting that on this bridge, unlike some bridges, there's two ways you can adjust the action. This bridge, unlike some 2-point bridges, this bridge has adjustable individual saddles for height, and also has the two pegs either end, so you can take the whole unit down, in which case what you'd get is a slightly up tilt. You'd lower the action, but the tilt wouldn't be parallel to the body, or the tremolo wouldn't be parallel to the body. Alternatively, we can use these single adjusters here, which are quite nifty, and they will also allow me to take the action down. It may not be enough, in which case we have to drop the two main bolts down, screws, bolts, whatever they're called. Anyway, I'm not going to play this much, but I guess it's got some nice distorted rock and roll. Yeah, it distorts nicely. There's no doubt about it, these Ibanez pickups are geared to that fantastic rock and roll power chord sort of sound. I don't know what the output is, I haven't measured them, but for me, they're on the clean sort of settings. They don't have enough character for my liking. This is funny. I've not personally not got on too well with the Ibanez pickups in the past. Let's put this down and get this off. But they really do seem to be geared to that more distorted sound. They distort and break up really nicely. So hang that up for the time being. Stay. Right, so we're going to get on with this little fella, and same old format. So I'm going to just in the old days I would have taken the neck off this, taken everything off, cleaned everything, taken the neck off, and concentrated on leveling the neck or flattening the neck out, and then leveling it with a beam or even a radius block. But in this brave new world, I don't do it that way. What we do now is to set the playing action exactly how I'd want it, and then level it in that configuration. Now these are very fine screws, and so far nothing I have here on this little set is matching them, so I'm going to be very careful not to try anything that Doesn't work. That one just about does. Yeah, so I'm going to restring this with 9s, which is kind of handy because that's what I've got here. I think that's also what's on here to begin with, so that makes it easier. We've got the BT engineer, or the OpenReach engineer, is here, changing us over from Sky to TalkTalk, not particularly for any other reason other than discovering that for my needs, I need to be able to upload video overnight, that kind of thing. I know I'm not going to get huge speeds, but with the Sky router, Sky router, it was impossible to upload at the same time as downloading, and that just made, I mean, not just slow. I know that all home broadband systems have a bias towards download. Your bandwidth is always greater on the download, but this was literally unable to do upload at the same time at all. So trying to upload even the smallest video file would crash all activity around the house, which was completely unacceptable. So that's out of the question. So we're switching over to good old TalkTalk, just to try and find one that works, basically. And if that doesn't work, well, we'll go back to BT or something. But I mean, a real bonus for me would be that if I was able to upload videos from home overnight, set them running at night, and they'll be done by morning. That's cool. Failing that, I'll carry on going to the Regis Business Lounge. So I want some. I want a little bit more relief in this neck, so I'm going to go counter. If I can get this thing in, I'm going to go counterclockwise to slacken off the truss rod slightly, if it will respond, because I want to just to get a fraction more curvature, is what I'm saying. And I can't see this very well. There's so little room when you've got strings on. That's the only downside of doing all this with strings on. Oh, that was done up pretty tight. Come on, out you come. That's the other thing then, you get a little bit of a turn on it and it won't give you your Allen key back. So I'm just going to get myself a little bit more relief than we had in it before. Okay, that's a tiny bit more. And then I'm going to do, as the next step, I'm going to aim at lowering the action using the individual settings here, and I'm aiming for that. What we have there, we had 3.1, so I want half a centimetre. I want 1.5 millimeters off this. And the question, of course, is there a millimetre and a half available to me in this little adjuster here? And actually, even on the deck, which it currently now is, we may find that it's still going to be, it's still too high. So I'm going to go back up a little bit to where it was, and I'm going to adjust the entire 2 points down. Make sure I've got the right doofer. So, as with all things, clockwise turns in, screws in, anti-clockwise unwinds. So I'm winding this down, and I'm trying to basically get the as close to the playing action I want, and that's actually pulled it nice and flat as well, so it's gone down. It surprised me, I didn't think it would be flat, but hey. So we're now looking at that's pretty much on 2 millimeters. So I'm going to just wind this in a little bit more. As you can tell, I'm going to run out of downward movement in a minute as this sort of sinks into the body of the guitar. That's quite good, since it's not got a tremolo arm anyway. We don't really need it. So on this guitar we should be aiming for a pretty low action. We want a 1.5 millimeters at most. So I'm going to also screw this one in fraction. I'm just looking along the edge. Actually, this is still slightly uneven. slightly higher on the actual setting here than at the bass end. Okay, that's our start point for the position of the tremolo. And then on the bass side, we're still showing, that's about just over 1.5. Okay, so I'm now going to take it down just a fraction, screwing in again, fraction, oh no, sorry, out, anti-clockwise, to go down. It's the opposite thing, isn't it? They work different, they work opposite to each other, those two sets of screws. Right, 1.5 fraction down. And so I'm going to just follow this across the neck now. I like to have it the same all the way, personally. Just a fraction low. So on this one, I've got to screw in to raise the height slightly. That one, screw in, raise this height. So by following the same height all the way across these individual bridge saddles, what I'm doing is I'm kind of copying the guitar radius. Now somebody, Dan, I think it was Dan in Canada, asked me did I use a radius guide to tell me how to set the bridge, and no I don't, and the reason why I don't is I map the same distance all the way across there. Some people like more at the bass end of things. If you get it, if the frets are accurate, that doesn't have to be the case in my experience. 1.5. Now this is low, that's just under. So it follows logically that by setting a 1.5 on each string, we're naturally following the radius of the neck. Okay, 1.5. Just under 1.5, 1.5, 1.5, 1.5, 1.5. Okay, so that's my first adjustments for the playing action, which now becomes very low down this end. I'm going to retune just at this point. What have I got that's in tune? I'll use this. I'm going to retune because, come on. If I get it up to correct tension, playing normal tension, then I can now check to see whether the frets underneath this are happy with this new action. Right, so first initial findings are with the action set really nice and low down here. It's surprisingly good set of frets underneath that, so they're not that uneven because it's playing with a little bit of zinging at the top, but more or less playing pretty much cleanly. So very encouraging from my perspective. It means I don't have to take hardly anything to get a precision level on this. So I've done the neck relief, I've done the playing action down here. The next or final bit of this stage in this little preparation part of it to get ready for the fret leveling is to take care of the playing action of the first fret. And Mike's instruction to me was to do my usual thing, which is to take that down to a nice low action, and I aim for 0.3 as a kind of conservative place to start. It can go lower than that for reasons I describe repeatedly on various videos. Just to repeat myself, why not? How do I know it can go lower? Because if you want to test that for yourself, here's what I recommend you do. Take your guitar, capo it on the first fret, so this becomes your nut and this becomes your new first fret, and then with your action set at whatever, I'm saying a really low action up here of 1.5, that's my bridge action set, but with that set the action over the first fret of these strings is minuscule. Right, you'd be amazed. It's not the nearly 1 millimeter it is now. It is a tiny fraction of that, because it's using this as the 0 fret, which is much more accurate than a nut and much more appropriate than using a plastic nut. Okay, so just as a test for yourself, if you want to know how low a first fret action you can get on your guitar, stick a capo on it, play the notes. Don't mind the tuning, it'll be slightly out, but right, play the guitar. You'll notice it plays beautifully, the chords are effortless to play with the capo on, and if you were to get your your spirit level, no, you know what I mean, feeler gauge, and if you were going to try and measure what is that gap that it's now created as my new first fret using a capo when the guitar plays so nicely, it's barely 1.5, sorry, it's barely 0.15 of a millimeter. Whereas currently here it's 0.7 on this bass one, so it's it may not sound a lot in absolute terms, but 0.7 is nearly 7 times as much as 0.1 or 0.15. So it's a huge difference relatively speaking, and so I know that I can take these down lower to make this guitar slicker to play, and in conjunction with a very light fret leveling will have a much more precise low action, if that's your thing. Some people don't like a low action, and if that really is the case, you can crank it back up, but this is the start point. Now the other thing is that while this guitar, I would say, doesn't strictly need a fret leveling just from the perspective of uneven frets, it does have some fret wear down here, which if we do fret leveling, we do just clean up some of these notes at this end, but as a bonus we also get rid of these, we can get rid of these dents that have grooves that have started to form, and that's just it's an added bonus really. But the final stage in preparing it to level the frets is to choose the action we want. So I'm going to go for, like I said, 0.3. I don't want to go totally mad and extreme, partly because the adjustment at this end makes the guitar, that coupled with the adjustment at the other end that I've just done, makes the guitar feel so completely different that people can be freaked out by it. And now Mike knows what it's like, the difference, because I've done a couple of his guitars before. But somebody who's brought a guitar to me, and I'll say, you do realise that if I take this down as low as it can go, it will feel substantially different. It can still be a shock. So I start with a D string, and I've got my D, effectively my D set here, my D nut file, and I check with the guide feeler gauge and the notes ringing with some fresh air between the string and the feeler gauge, so it tells me I've got a little bit of room to take this down. So I get my thingy and I just tilting back a little bit, sort of 5 degrees away from the horizontal. Sorry, I've got a cold. Just take a little bit out at a time, push the thing under, carries on ringing true, there's a little bit more space. And so with that light sort of 5 degree angle on it, I'm just going to gently cut away some more. As soon as I start getting a little buzz now, I'm going to stop on that. It's so precise, we don't need to push it. Make sure it's as close to in tune as it can be. just to keep the thing under tension, and also to make sure that your string is sitting all the way in the slot, because particularly when you work with plastic, sometimes you can get fooled into thinking that the string is right the way in the bottom of the slot, and it gets stuck halfway, and you keep digging the slot thinking it's got to go further down, and then suddenly put it under tension and pow, the string goes right to the bottom of the slot and you're overcut. So that isn't the case here. I'm making full tension, check, eyeball the gap, you can see it going down, hoik the string out of the way under tension and get in that groove at a 5 to 10 degree tilt backwards. This is probably a graphite thing, not very close. What's good about the human eye is you can see the shadow that the thing's casting, and you can really gauge very easily whether the gap is the same. And if you just press down a little bit, you can see it opening and closing. They're pretty close actually. Actually, there's a bit of room to go on each of those. It's currently sitting at about 0.4. Let's just see if it is 0.4. Yeah. I'm going to carry on 0.4, see how it feels. And the beauty of that is, of course, is if we want to go further down with it, we can. Although, as I've said before, I've gone down to 0.2 before, and it's worked very nicely. But I'm starting conservative 0.4. So once I've done this, the guitar will be binging. The guitar will be ready to fret level, and then we'll do that with my tuneable fret leveling tool, which is, as you may have seen before, is a truss rod with sandpaper on it. But it's a great approach, and it lets you get what I would call, with confidence, a precise fret leveling that you can't get when you use the passive flattened neck method. Okay, I'm stopping there. Passive flattened neck coupled with a straight sanding beam. If you do that method, you don't simulate the effects of string compression, or neck compression I should say. The strings put the neck under, and doing it this way, that we'll see in a minute, simulates that or recreates that, and it makes it just that little bit more accurate. Okay, so I'm still working at 0.4. Anything above 0.5 starts to create problems in my experience. It starts to introduce not only intonation problems, where the fretted notes are slightly sharp, which really messes up open chords like nobody's business, but it also makes the guitar suddenly a lot harder to play for such a tiny amount of difference in height. But 0.4 and 0.4 to 2, I'll go comfortably 0.25 to 0.4 is a good playing range I've found. Now, as with all my stuff, I go on the experiential basis, so I don't really mind or care what the manufacturer's PDF says, as long as I understand the principle to which I'm working, and if I have practical experience of what it feels like, that it works, and somebody likes the way it works, then I will kind of err on the side of that experiential basis, and take manufacturer's figures as a generic kind of start point, but not an absolute or a truth of any kind. Not only that, they may well describe exactly what they set their machines to do, but that doesn't mean that's what we actually want. Okay, now this is this is on the mark, but it looks bigger. The gap looks bigger because there is an indentation underneath it from wear. So we have to be conscious that the visual starts to change a little bit because of the wear. So I'm going with the flat gauge reading. It's telling me. Let's just make sure this is tight. Let's just double check it again. Never start without being sure what it is. See, not much room on there, partly because the gap is quite big, or the dent is quite big, so it looks higher than it is. So whilst, you know, when the fret is completely undamaged or unworn, then the eye is a very good guide and judging by the shadows. But as soon as you've got wear in that fret, that kind of perspective or that judgment is going to be slightly skewed. So, you know, trust your feeler gauge, and if it's telling you that you're almost there, which this one is, then trust that, and remember that the eye is combining the overall height with the little dent that's underneath it to make it look bigger. Okay, so now we're on the last string. And this one, again, because of the dent, this one's almost there to begin with. A little bit of work. I'm using the same B string file on this one, because I just shy away from that last file most of the time because it's so fine. It easily ends up causing the string to snatch because it's such a tiny thin file. We're almost there. I'm going to stop there. That's pretty good. Okay, so having, oh dear, what was that? Damn, I've just flipped a truss rod screw onto the floor. This is like deja vu, Mike, because do you remember ages ago, I had one of your guitars here and the same damn thing happened. Luckily this time I found it, and it's going to go safely over there. I'm out of pots at the moment, which is a bit mad. Right, so first stage in this preparation complete. All out of tune, of course, but I'm going to just put it back in tune as close as I can get it. Now we've got the three main variables taken care of, and that is the playing action, the neck relief, and the nut action, or the first fret action. Well, that's impressive in how good the underlying frets are on this. So we've done my major alterations. There's just a little bit of, I wouldn't call it buzzing, but a little frazzle noise occasionally. So this guitar is going to respond really well to a very, very light fret leveling. So it's ready now for that job. I'm just going to take these strings off for a moment, drop it back, because I want to get under here and paint all of these frets with permanent marker for the fret leveling stage. That'll be a really helpful way of knowing where the fret leveling file has touched and where it hasn't. So just doing this at this stage sort of saves a little bit of time. So I'm going to draw permanent marker across the top, and it's it's just a little bit less critical to be perfectly accurate on a rosewood fingerboard, because it's a bit more tolerant of if you mess up with a tiny blip of marker, you can clean it off and get away with it. But for some reason, permanent marker onto a gloss lacquered maple neck is an absolute beast to get off, in my experience. So you really want to be as steady-handed as you possibly can be with this process, and take no risks. So once I've done this, I'm going to retune the strings back up to playing tension. That's really important at this stage, to have the guitar under playing conditions from here on, including of course this new action that we've set. So everything about the guitar now will be kind of ready to play, or how we'd want it to play. And so when we do the fret leveling and the reprofiling and then the polishing, we're doing it all to kind of straight on playing conditions. It doesn't have to be pitch perfect, it needs to be pretty close though. So, thank you. What we're going to do, the way I like to look at this is, whereas most guitars you get, you have to live with whatever the condition of the frets are, and most guitar actions, second hand and new, most of the action is set, usually set to accommodate whatever the faults are in the underlying frets, and it's usually almost universally that means unevenness. That's the common thing that all guitars start out life with. It's impossible to get them totally even without doing this kind of action, or putting them through a very expensive machine, which most budget guitars, and actually a lot of brand guitars, don't go through. So so normally a guitar comes out of the factory more or less even frets, a bit of unevenness, the action is set, and as long as it can be played at 0.5 or so above the first fret, and 2 or 3 millimeters down here, and it's just about playable, out it goes. And people ever after are tweaking it to try and make the guitar play as well as it can despite the neck. And what we're doing here is a very different approach. We're saying, I'm going to choose what the action is. I'm going to state that it's going to be 1.5 down here at last fret, it's going to be 0.4 over the first fret, and it's going to have 0.25 mils of relief here, and we're going to then make the frets fall in line with that, and it's the opposite way around from how it normally works, and that's why it takes this time. So the fun part of this, or the amazing part, which is it's kind of common sense when you think about it. I'm going to use the whiteboard just to show you this, because I haven't used that for a while. So I can get rid of these because do I need to? No, actually I'll snap. Oh god, maybe I will. Yes, I'll get my camera and snapshot it. Sorry about the interference you might get at this point. Noise, noise, noise. Shoot. Right, now I can rub it out. Yeah, so fret leveling, the way I'm going to do it is, traditionally I would have taken the neck off, flattened it out. It's not very flat, but, and then I would have got my leveling beam, which would be as flat as it possibly could be, which isn't like this drawing, and we'd go backwards and forwards on top of the flat neck, and we would, by virtue of the nice levelness of the underside of the leveling beam, all of these frets would get a little bit taken off them until everything was beautifully level. But like I said, that doesn't account for reality, because in reality when your guitar is fully strung in playing conditions, it has a curved neck, even slightly. There's a bit of radius between the horizontal and the neck. So it not only is slightly curved, but it's also under a lot of compression, which makes the frets do slightly different things from how they do when they're passive and flat, like the first example. So your guitar, you can get level, pretty good result. You can get 90%, I always say, something like 90% improvement by doing it that way, and it's quite easy to do. If you do it this way, you're recreating. If you can level the frets while it's not only well, it's strung, there's the strings, and it's in full strung playing mode, you are recreating the compression which the passive method doesn't do, and whatever the effects are on this thing. So if you level it passively and then you pull it into the playing position and adding in the compression, what was level when you did it passively isn't quite level for some reasons or other. Don't ask me the technicalities of it, but practice has shown me it's true. It's not precisely level when you put it back under compression to play it with a bit of neck relief, which you need. So if you can find a way to level it in its playing configuration with compression factored in, I would say it comes up to sort of 95%, even better efficiency on the fret leveling. And so how the hell do you do that? Well, it isn't actually that difficult. It just takes a little bit of improvisation, I suppose. So here's our neck. I'm exaggerating the curve, right? Here's our neck with our frets, some of which may be just microscopically higher relative to their neighbours, and that's all that we're talking about. It's really important to remember this word relative. It's not an absolute, because look, they're not level, they're curved. So absolute flatness, no, it's relative. And what we care about is this one relative to that one, and that one, this one relative to that one, and that one, and so on. So we've got our guitar genuinely in playing configuration, and we've got strings on it which are going across there like that, ready to be twanged. And how the hell do we fret level that? Well, guess what? We get a tool. Instead of being a flat beam, let's get a tool. It's gently curved in the exact same curve as the neck. Okay, and if we can get a curve that exactly mirrors the curve in the neck, and you put that against that, and you rock it backwards and forwards, you're going to get a precise relative level, because it's like it's a flat surface that's bent, right? But it's the important bit is you're leveling while the compression is in the neck, so that once you change the strings, clean up the guitar, put everything back together, and it comes back into this compressed playing condition, the frets will return to the relative levelness that you achieved by using this curved configuration. It sounds mad. So how do you achieve matching your tool? How do you bend your tool to match the neck? Well, let's start with a curve. Right, here's our neck curve, and the beauty of this is we use a truss rod. Right, let's start with our truss rod really flat. Okay, there's a truss rod, and what we do is we put 3 little feet down at different places. These feet have to be exactly the same size, and in my case I use little brass dome nuts, and they're exactly the same size from the same manufacturing. So you can see right now there's a curve of the neck. These 3 little feet are sort of mapping the curve, 3 points on the curve. That's what it's mapping, right? But you can see that if I now lay this, let's do it here, if I now lay my file down on top of these 3, you can see that it touches the first 2 and not the middle one. Oops. So what I do is I bend my truss rod and I put it down again, and if I put it down again and it still just touches the end 2 but not the middle one, I'll bend it some more, and what I'll do, using these little feet as a guide, I'll bend it until it exactly touches all 3 of those equally, and that's a pretty good judgment call that you have to have some experience to do. But once I've done that, I now have a truss rod that is matching perfectly the curve of the neck. Now there's another thing to factor in. If I draw a really quick sort of cross section of my neck. There's my fingerboard, and you can see it's got a radius, and I'll draw some frets over it. Okay, so there's my curved frets, 1, 2, whatever, 3, and so that it has a radius, as you know, which is the amount of curvature it has. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my little feet, and I'm going to map down the middle of one part of it first, and set my level to match this strip down here. Let's say the A strip, the E channel, the high E. Okay, so I get the curvature for the neck at that part, and I do the fret leveling. Then I'll move my little feet, and I will tune the file, the tool, the truss rod, whatever you want to call it. I'll tune it to the shape or the profile relief, the relief in the neck at that middle part of the radius, and then I'll do the same over the other side. And I could do it 6 times, or I can do it 3 times. The more I do it, the better I map the variations or the vagaries of the relief across, the changes in relief across the radius. Changes in relief at different places across the radius. Okay, and that way I can use this very simple, cheap thing, which is a truss rod pulled out of an old guitar, which has a flat bar welded to 2 bits of a rod which screw together. The bar can't move, so it bends when you tighten the rod, 2 parts of the rod together, and you get deformation and a nice curve, and you can tune it. So back to reality, into life. So what does that mean? Well, it means if I'm going to precision level the frets on this baby, playing conditions, it's fairly neutral on the neck at the moment. That's fine. We've supported it pretty much in the middle. This thing is beeping at me, and I'm now going to begin that process of mapping the amount of relief in this strip. So I'm working on the E strip, and I'm going to map the amount of relief. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spread these little domed nuts as far out as I can, but equidistant. So I'm just going to sort of work out where the best spot is to place them, because I just want them to be evenly spaced. Okay, so that goes to there. So that should be evenly spaced, and what I'm going to do before I do anything else is I'm just going to mark with some gaffer the point on the neck where these little feet are placed, so I can just replace it, because I'm going to do this several times as I go across the radius of this guitar. So I just want to know each time where I need to put the little brass foot, because it just saves me time. Okay, now I have placed that, the first thing I do is I slack off my truss rod. Now in its relaxed state, this doesn't go perfectly level, it's just slightly, I don't know what it is actually, yeah, slightly curved. It just happens to be the way it's welded, but it's always been curved enough or straight enough to start with. So what I do to begin with is I press down on the left hand one, or your right but my left, and then I drop down the other part and I see what happens. So the first thing is the physicality of it tells me, the sound and the feel tells me it's touching this end one first. And if you remember the diagram, if it touches the 2 ends but not the middle, it means the neck, it has more curvature than the rod. So I need to tune the rod with a twist. Press it down again. Now what's happening is I can feel straight away it's not only moving the middle one, but it's actually sitting on the middle one and missing the end one, so that's too much relief. So I back off, and I'm still getting a bit more in the middle than the end, and again this is very much based on experience and feel, but I can tell that it hits the middle and just, it's a double hit. It hits the middle, bends forward and hits the front one, deforms, hits the front one, but it tells me that the shape is too curved. So I slack off a little tiny bit more, and that is where I want it to be. Very gently place that down. I don't want to turn any more things. Move my little feet, and I flip out the E string from its slot. I get a little plastic device. It looks like a miniature Imperial AT-AT body from Star Wars, but it's actually a snap connector for electrical stuff. but all I'm going to use it for is just to spread, it's just a block to spread these strings temporarily, and that pushes the E string out of the way, which is dead handy. Now I take my tuned truss rod with its 400 grit self-adhesive paper on there, and this is where the trust comes in. Not only it's a trussed rod, this is a you just start to, under gravity, just you're working backwards and forwards this truss rod, or this leveling file, whatever you want to call it, this tuned, curved sanding beam, you name it, that's what it's doing. And I'm pretty much just using the weight of gravity and the 400 grit to achieve what I want. I'm just guiding it with the other hand, pushing it with my right hand. Now what I'm going to do is, any second now, I'm just going to stop, because taking a stop and a look is it's very hard to see, unfortunately, in the camera view. But again, with experience you can learn to diagnose exactly what's happening. So logic tells me if I've got the curve wrong and it's too flat, I'll be cutting these ends but not the middle. If I've got it too curved, right, and the fingerboard is flatter, then I will probably end up cutting the middle and not the edges, because it will be cutting heavily in the middle. What I've got is I'm cutting here, missing here, cutting a bit here, cutting here, 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 all the way to the end. It tells me I've got a pretty clean coverage, and that confirms to me that where I stopped with the mirroring the shape of the neck, or the relief of the neck, is pretty accurate, and I've got that in the tool, so I can carry on with that setting. What I can see as well at this first glance is, where are the really high frets? Well, there's a couple right, there's particularly one right up here, and there's a few in the higher register, which is quite common. I can also see where the dents are, because they show up as little black pits where the pen has gone into them, but the truss rod has not yet got down to them. So that's if you're aiming to not only do a light leveling, but also to take away those pockets of wear, or those grooves. You keep your eye on this as well, because you might go further than you technically need in terms of leveling, because you want to get this cleaned up. So it's you can see it's a set of variables at work, but all of it is based on trusting that the truss rod that you're using for this tool is capable of copying profile of the neck as it stands right now, and it's sympathetic to that profile, or the relief in the neck I should say, and it's mapping that curve really nicely, and we're just working it backwards and forwards until we've achieved what we want. And in this case it's a mixture of leveling the frets so that their notes ring out really cleanly, but the other intention, or the other goal that we're aiming for, is to try and remove those pockets of, or those grooves from playing wear over the years that have built up. Now, as I said, you may have to do that, you may have to, well, you will have to remove a certain amount of material, and again it's a judgment call. These aren't particularly bad grooves, and they won't massively affect the way the guitar plays. And you may make a judgment call that says, actually these frets are so old and worn, I don't have enough metal to keep going to eradicate these grooves. I'd rather retain an average amount of fret metal on all the rest of the frets and live with the specific grooves down here. That may be a judgment call you make. If you've got a lot of fret metal, then you've got the kind of freedom to carry on until you've got down to these grooves and taken them out. But I think there's a general principle applies in fret leveling that I've found anyway, and that is that while it's obvious that your fret leveling tool will take away high frets, and in a way that's what you're trying to eradicate, is high frets, so that you don't have fret buzzing. Well, your real enemy that you've got to be conscious of, that really dictates what's possible, is your low frets, including these wear grooves, which are sort of equally kind of low spots. So it's the low spots that are your enemy that dictate what's possible. and they're the ones, it's the low spots, the low frets or the low spots that will cost you the most fret material to iron them out. So stopping right here, I'm making an assessment of the overall condition of the frets. How much have I taken? How much metal is there? How much further can I comfortably go? And where am I right now? So right now, the dents have gone from the first. They're almost gone from the second. They're a bit present on the fifth, third, and the fifth, but they're almost gone. But to achieve that, we've taken a fair bit more off these higher frets. But that isn't a problem because there is enough metal. And we're only talking very small amounts anyway, because we're dealing with 400 grit and it's very, very slow acting. You'd struggle to kind of ruin your guitar in a split second using this level of fine sanding. But it's nice and slow, and I'm going to look at this now. I think that's going to be it for trying to take out those grooves. They're not a major problem anyway, but we will have tidied it up somewhat. So what I do now is I replace the string, take out the little spacer spreader at the end, and I go back to trying out these notes and just make sure that everything plays precisely all the way up, which it does. If anything, there's a tiny little choke on the very last fret, which I'm just going to pay a bit of attention to, and then we're done on this track. So you can see that's what I mean by a precision fret leveling. It's what makes it precision is, yes, it's the tunable tool, of course. That adds that maybe an extra 10%, like I was saying, to the accuracy of this thing. But what makes it precision is the constant assessment of what you're doing. It's not, it's not kind of, you're not kind of bludgeoning this thing into shape. You are reassessing, you are making judgment calls all the time based on the situation you're in, and you're constantly also retuning as we move across the radius of the guitar neck to make sure that it's constantly following the right shape. Okay, I'm happy with that. So that's my first track. Now I'm going to just follow my marker post-it notes, my masking tape guide, and I'm just moving across into the next track between the B and the G, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing now with this truss rod, and I'm going to place it down on the left side and see what happens. Now it's heavily impacting on the far right end, but it's also moving the middle one, so I am making contact. That's the first thing. If I go a bit further in the curve, I can feel now it's bouncing down off the middle one, so I've gone too far. Back off. That's still good. So it's that sensitive, and I promise you, with a few goes, you will have the experience to judge it. It's very difficult to describe. It's a feel thing that you can only get with a bit of experience. So now I know that I've got this track. Effectively, you could call it the B slot or the B track on the guitar. Now I'm just going to continue onwards with this leveling with two goals. Remember, one is to ensure that the top frets here are all level, so we don't get any buzzing on the strings, and the second objective is to also then keep an eye on the grooves in the lower frets, and to make sure that they're gone as well, or as far gone as we can get rid of them, to give it a kind of cleaned up. Now, as I say, on this guitar they aren't so extreme that they really interfere with play, but they could be, and we want to make sure that we get rid of that. Now I think that's pretty much there already. So again, all of these don't necessarily take the same amount of time to get them ready or get them into shape. Very accurate neck, these Ibanez. I do like them for that. Okay, so on into the third strip between the G and the D, and same again. So you can see constantly retuning, or just if not retuning, but just making sure that this is still the same relief profile, and not accepting it that it is. Right, that's touching all of them, but heavy. Oh, I don't know actually. Oh, right. Yeah. Just about at a place where the inherent curvature in this tool is enough. Now, because I said at the beginning it is slightly curved. If the relief in this neck was so little that this tool was too curved for it, I would revert to another one which has a stiffer characteristic. Again, this one came from StewMac in the States. The other one came from any old Squire Affinity, but this one is a kind of U-channel truss rod, and it is stiffer because it's boxed off in aluminium. And this one starts out flatter than the other ones, but I don't use it for the simple reason that it's twice as wide, and I prefer, on balance, for the accuracy, is to use the thinner one. So long as I've got, as long as the default curve in this truss rod isn't too great for the profile or the relief in this neck, then I'll carry on using it. Of course, if it is, then the question is, have I got enough relief in the neck? Because it's very rare to have found, or I don't think I've come across a guitar yet where this tool doesn't do the job for it. And if it were too curved and it's in its completely slacked off mode, then I'd be asking, actually, do I have enough relief in the neck itself? Because that would be a very valid question. Okay, so I'm just looking all over. Everything's looking quite good. I'm just going on the basis, I said a number of times before, that I'm not aiming for some absolute notional thing where everything's being leveled microscopically flat. I'm going for as little removal of metal as possible to make it play the way I've set the action. Fine. Don't take any more than that. There's no need. It plays. Now, where have I got to? Okay. 2 more strips to do, I think. Okay, oops, let's move this out of the way. Sometimes it's quite hard to shift these strings now, the thicker they get, but it still works. And these will be thrown away anyway, these strings, so it doesn't matter if we manhandle them a bit. Okay, so again, hardly any wear on the strings down at this end, so we really don't need to take as much metal off, but we still need to pay attention to making sure that the high frets are dealt with, so this thing will play nicely. And I'm going to use the same curve to do the final bit to the outside of the low E. But again, I will just check by physically playing the thing and make sure that it plays clean notes all the way. Which it does. This is a nice neck, good old Ibanez with their wizard necks or whatever this is. So the final strip just on the outside of the E, as I say, I'm just going to use the same curve because it's going to be almost identical. Just get the edges a little bit, and make sure we get any high bits just evened out. And you can see it's working quite a bit on the 12th fret actually. That's high on both edges. It's not uncommon as well for frets to be high right at the edges. If you think about the process of pushing them, putting them in place, sometimes if the radius of the fret or the bending is not done to the correct radius, or the call pressing them down is incorrect, then you'll get the edges sticking slightly upwards. Yo, job done. Okay, that's brilliant. So thanks to the quality of this Ibanez wizardy neck, or whatever it is, not too long or onerous a task there on the fret leveling. Can be very different on other guitars. Sometimes it can take hours, literally, to do it. But that's either been correctly worked on in the past, or the manufacturing method that puts frets in is really accurate. Okay, so having been at it for 1 hour 10 minutes, we've done the fret leveling. The next stage now is to lose the strings. Really, I'm going to keep a set of these, I think. I'll keep these as a spare set for doing stuff. I'm just going to get some pliers to help me. Always useful to have a set of spare strings. I've got a few, but you can always use them as a kind of sacrificial set for doing fret leveling and stuff. I find it more convenient to keep a strat set because they are longer overall than the Les Paul set. And if you're setting up a Les Paul copy, sorry, a strat, and you've only got a used Les Paul copy set, then you won't be able to reach the end of your strat headstock, and it's annoying. So of the two types, I prefer to keep the strat style spare strings. Now at this point, when I get the strings off and we're ready to proceed with the next stage of the fret leveling process, which is the reprofiling stage, which is where we take the flattened frets and reshape them into nice smooth domed shaped beasties. To do that, we're going to need to mask off the neck with masking tape to protect the fingerboard, and we're also going to it gets a bit dirty by the end of it, but it's very important. Now this bridge I haven't seen before, and I wonder, do these strings just come straight through? Yes, they do. Okay, bit of fiddle here for a minute while I try and get them as straight as possible, so that when I come to reuse them, first of all they'll go through the bridge as cleanly as possible now, but also they'll be easy to reuse when it comes time. So it's time spent now pays dividends later. Yeah, so next stage of the process, reshape these frets because they've been slightly flattened in the process of leveling them. By definition, that's what we do. To level them, we flatten off the excess material and it leaves a flat spot. So that's no good for sort of smoothness of play and intonation purposes, so we need to reshape the fret into a nice smooth dome suitable for playing, and then once we've done that, we also then need to polish the frets up using a variety of grades of sandpaper through into a micro mesh set, which is very, very fine polishing papers or cloths. And then at the end of that, I've lost my clippers. Then at the end of that, I'll finish off the frets with a going over with Autosol, which is a kind of car metal polish stuff, which is pretty good. That and the Dremel with a cloth moppy thing on the top will give it a nice overall finish. I'm now just taking the final curly bits off these strings, which hopefully will be long enough to still reattach, but hopefully will avoid the snagging properties that you get. Okay, so in terms of time, we're probably about halfway through. And as I say, this guitar, because of the nice condition of its neck, is probably a little easier than some to do. Certainly made the fret leveling process a little quicker. Right. Now these are not coming through the back very easily here. I don't know if they're locked in place at all. I don't think they are, by virtue of the fact that some of them are coming straight through. So it probably requires the assistance of a very thin helping hand to push the thing through like that. And the thing is binging at me left, right and centre. Come on now, through you go. There you are. And finally, somebody made a comment a while back on YouTube. You've talked for an hour without having a drink. And I think one of the things that helps in that department was I was years ago, or for many years, I was a university lecturer. I taught graphic design. Again, let's stick out of there. Yeah, taught graphics and multimedia, as it was then called. So I'm used to talking non-stop most of the day. Okay, so now we've taken the strings off, and what happens, of course, is the neck relaxes into its more flattened state. The relief is less, but it doesn't matter, because when we put it back with the strings on it, it'll come back up to its position, and that relative levelness that I was talking about will be restored. So the bit I want to do now is I'm going to leave. What am I going to do? Yeah, I'm going to leave the cleaning till the end when I've done the mucky stuff on the neck. So the next part of it is to, sorry, always makes a noise, is to mask off the neck completely. And for this I use low tack masking tape. Don't be fooled by online sellers. I got ripped off by people selling ordinary masking tape, and that sounds a small distinction, but when you've gone and pulled off some lacquer, because it's full on sticky crap, you'll be annoyed too. Actually, it's only usually a problem with very old guitars or older guitars, but low tack masking tape should be quite safe on all of these modern guitars. And I'm making sure that this is precisely masked off, leaving only the frets showing. And obviously, as the frets get narrower, I'm going to run out of, I can't do it with this thickness, so I'm going to have to get my little cutting board out, and I'm going to precisely cut enough different width pieces so I can do the whole of this neck safely, and some of the body edges, really, to make sure that when I'm using the sandpaper, none of the sandpaper scuffs on the finish. It's very unlikely it will, but it's always just a little extra safety precaution. Okay, so for the time being, I'm going to hang that up while I do the cutting board business. Sorry, push my heater out of the way so it doesn't roast the guitar. And the cutting board biz is fairly straightforward. 4 strips of the old masking tape across here. Hard to get it staying straight actually, but get it straight as we can under the circumstances. And then I cut them, 2 of the strips I cut into thirds, and the other 2 strips I cut in half longways. And then I've got the right dimensions that I need for thingamajig, whatever the thingamajig. Now where's my blade gone now? Just make myself a new blade and promptly lost it. There's a few old ones over there, but heck, it looks fairly new. The place is riddled with blades. So I'm just going to straighten off my edges. Once I've just cut this, I'll sign off and I'll come back ready to do the next bit, because I seem to be being bombarded by WhatsApp messages as well, which I need to take care of. Okay, so I'll cut as I described, and I'll see you when the next is masked off. Hey, we're back. As you can see, the guitar is covered over with masking tape to protect the pickups from dust and the fingerboard, most importantly, from abrasions and such like. So having leveled the frets, what that does is puts a flat spot across them, more or less, depending on how much leveling was needed. But of course that can't play like that. So we've got this fret crowning tool from StewMac, and we've got a jumbo side and a medium side. I think these are medium jumbos, but let's try the jumbo profile on here and see what happens. Well, it cuts nicely, and the idea is we want to cut off the edges of the flat spot with this concave file and stop whilst leaving a thin line of black marker down the centre of the fret. That's the target, and once we are able to do that, we know that we've removed the sort of excess width, i.e. the shoulders of the flat spot. We've rounded it off, but we haven't touched the top of the fret, which means that the relative heights are all still as they were when we levelled it, which is of course what the purpose of all of this is. Now what this is showing me straight away is I can still see the indentations on these first strings, and I'm going to have to live with that. It's not too much, they're just a little bit, and it's showed because what shows up as the pen being trapped. We will smooth those out with the sandpapering, that operation that comes up next, but it won't be absolutely perfect, but it'll certainly be better than it was. The grooves won't be as big as they were. So on frets like these, it's quite good because to get this rounded off, I don't really have to do that much work. It's quite mild, and I can just kind of whiz my way along here and be confident that there'll be a bit more to do at the other end, where we took off some more volume of material from the frets, but it's a fairly swift operation. And once we've done this, we then move on to polishing it all out. Now what I'm seeing on this actually is more than I expected. There's a bit more fret wear than I could see the first time round, and it is nicely shown up in this part of the process. This is where you really see it. But as I say, it is very mild, and it shows up because this method here does allow very, very tiny level differences to show up quite clearly. Anyway. So just leaving. Ooh, the only downside is you can sometimes skip off like that. Just leaving that thinnest of lines down the middle where possible, and away we go. And following that, then it's 2 grades of sandpaper time, and that takes a bit of a while, so I won't bore you with watching all of that sandpapering. Mike, you've seen it before, so you can do without all of that. But this is a nice guitar. I'm liking this one. I'm really pleased to notice how well balanced it is compared to the mahogany one that I had, because I was very disappointed. I loved the look of that thing, and I certainly liked how it played. I wasn't a massive fan of the pickups, I have to say, the INF Infinity things, but I really loved how it was styled and played, but I couldn't live with the top heaviness of it. But this thing is much better, and it's also extremely pretty. So I could be persuaded to have one of these, especially with the precision of this neck as it's turning out, or the frets I should say, and the neck. Okay. So I'm nearly there, 2 frets to go. I've just been in to check out our new internet connection, having switched from Sky to TalkTalk, and Sky was terrible. I discovered that it wasn't able to do simultaneous uploading and downloading, which is completely useless from from the point of view that I need to upload videos for real-life guitars. So that was hopeless, no good to anybody. But this this new talk connection at least is doing the two things together so far. Not blindingly quickly, but at least it's doing it. So I'm kind of, at the moment, quietly optimistic that it will do the job for us. I don't mind if it takes all night to upload a video. I've got that time. It's just I can't keep doing the choking off every other device in the house. So basically it was the problem with the Sky router just meant that I couldn't, as soon as I tried to upload a video, it not only killed everybody's internet usage, but it also killed off my upload as well, so it was a complete waste of time. So everything just stopped and I wasted all my time trying to get it to work and ended up just binning it. So having changed that out now for TalkTalk, it's pleasing to note that it's actually working. I'm not going to speak too soon. I'll let you know when it's successfully uploaded a whole video. So I'm just cutting up some sets of paper here and grouping them, so we'll have 4 pieces of the 600, we'll have 2 of the 12 and 2 of the 1500. I'll stash this for the next guitar. So that's my sandpapering kit identified, and then I'll also use the micro mesh paper here to do the final bits, and then right at the end then I'll do some what do you call it, autosol for the final polish up. So you can see that that's what the deal is: 600, 1200, 1500, 1500 through to 12,000 with a block from somewhere around about here onwards, and then some autosol to polish it off. And I will not put you through the misery of that. I'll just jump magically forward now to when it's done. And in fact, what I'll do is I'll jump forward to when I've taken all the paper off and I've given the whole of the body a clean up, and we'll be ready to do the fun bit, which is restringing it. So see you in a minute. Okay, well, by the magic of editing or stop starting, here we are with the guitar frets fully leveled, polished, and the fretboard oiled, ready to go. Now, as I'm at this point, I'm going to put the cover back on, because having made my adjustments already, I know that it's where I want it to be, so I don't need to do any more truss rod adjustment. Which the hell way round is it, man? This way. Only one way. So yeah, polished it all up and cleaned it up and oiled it, so we're ready to restring. And that's the fun part of all of this, because having done all the hard work first, all it means is when we restring this baby, it'll just be ready to intonate. We'll check the intonation. I would expect it to be pretty accurate, looking at the position of those whatsits. Yeah, check the intonation and tweak if necessary, and then we're good to go. So it's a nice bit where all the hard work's done and we're on the downhill leg of the journey. Okay, so a nice day going on out there. Well, pretty nice day for end of January. I reckon it'll be spring in February and then summer in April. That's what it's doing. Okay, set off strings. I've ordered a whole bunch more, so I'll be able to catch up with the Ibanez Art Core that I had to pause on when I'm down there. I was hoping to finish that today, but I had to put it on hold because of not having a complete set of 10s. I've got most of a set, but not a complete set. So I'm going to poke these things through and get them all dangling through first, and then I'll attach them one by one. It's kind of easier to do it with a guitar up on its side. Which way am I going? Oh yeah, this way. So I'm hoping that back in the house, my test upload, which in fact is the full-length video, which is the video of Gary's Epiphone service setup. I'm hoping that that will be still going. I don't mind if it's slow, as long as it's still going and other people can get online at the same time. That's the main thing. And then if that works, I can then schedule stuff to do overnight so it doesn't slow anybody else down much. But it might sound a bit primitive to those of you who live in civilization where you've got really genuinely ultra fast broadband at the moment, but for someone like me who hasn't been able to do it at all, this would be a nice gift. I'd be very happy. Although it's quite nice to go into the business centre, the Regis Business Centre in Plymouth. It isn't entirely convenient, and it isn't always convenient, and I'd rather be able to do videos as I do them rather than store them up for 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time until I can afford the time to go over to Plymouth. Okay, so right, so here are my strings all lined up, and I'm going to do my usual stringing method at the end here. That is, I'm going to pull all the way through first, drop into the slot, make sure it's through the back, and then pull back one fret's worth. Make sure all these are pointing upwards, because otherwise they get in the way of the string winder. So I've pulled back a fret's worth, and I'm going to start winding from there, and I want the held end to go over the loose end first time round, which it's doing, keeping it all taut. And then this time, as the free end comes round, I bend the free end up and push the held end under the free end to make sure it goes under it this time. And while I'm at it, I will take off this excess now, because I don't want to be stabbing myself any more than I have to. I do enough as it is. So again, line it up straight, get the hole in the peg facing you to begin with, pull it through, make sure it's through at the back, pull it back a fret's worth, hold it there, and let it start to bite. Just put this, I'm going to put its end down there, make sure it goes over, which it isn't, go over the held, over the free bit. As it comes around this time, under the free bit. So just steering it and keeping it under tension, that's all that's going on here. Make sure it's all the way through. Sometimes you can get it catching on the tremolo block, and then you get an unpleasant shock a little bit later on as it releases its grip on the ball and the string pings forward with a big bang. And that's not the problem. The problem is once it's done that, you've got a crimp in the wrong place and you've weakened the string. So it's always worth giving it that sort of upward pull through the tremolo block to make sure it's all the way through correctly. Because you don't want to start the string's lifespan by stressing it and half killing it. Your playing will do enough of that. Okay, so again I lay it in there, go back down to the end, check that it's all the way through, which is, pull back one fret and turn it, holding it until it bites, and then I'm just going to hold it under tension to steer it over the top to begin with, all the way round, yoik up the free bit, push down the held bit. And it just gives it a sort of extra easy locking effect really. So it's all going on nicely, no hold-ups or snags, literally. Again, all the way through, check the, there you go, that one was about to catch me out. Much easier to do on a single-sided set of tuners. It's a bit more fiddly when you come to do the Gibson headstock style, because you have to sort of do it a bit back to front with the winder and it all gets a bit caggy. is a word that I grew up using. So pulling that through, back a fret, and we're almost there. When my son was down a couple of weeks ago, my eldest boy, before he went off to Australia, he and his girlfriend found it quite amusing to watch me restringing a guitar in the house and take some pictures of me with my tongue sticking out, which we all had a darn good laugh at. Right, so all strings on, all very loose at the moment, and I can feel already it's a lightning low action on this. So the thing I've said time and time again, but I'll reiterate now, is when you've got this place, there are a couple of things you want to do. First one is you want to get some graphite into those nut slots. So to do that, I'm just going to pull all the strings off gently to one side for a minute, and then I'm going to drop some graphite powder into each of these slots. Now if you haven't got graphite powder, which you can get from a hardware shop, and it goes on quite liberally, then you can get a soft pencil, sharpen it, and then kind of scrape it in the slot. It will do the same thing, it will leave pencil lead or graphite. It acts as a lubricant. Once I've done that, and then I'm going to gently reposition all my strings back in and get into the next stage, which will be stretching the strings. So this is a pretty good material, this nut anyway, so it probably doesn't need this, but just blowing away the excess for a minute. So what I recommend you do then, once you've done that, is to take the string, each string, and putting on pressure between your thumb and your forefinger, just go literally up and down each string and push out, stretch out all the slack that you can feel in there. And if you're starting with the strings pretty slack, you'll feel them really slack afterwards. I feel like they're hanging off, but this will get the natural stretch out of them, and there's tons of stretch in a new set of strings, as you'll know from previous playing history, that if you're not careful, it will take hours or sometimes days for it to settle down. If you do this, you're taking care of a lot of that beforehand, and my experience has been that 3 or 4 of these stretching exercises with a couple of heavy bends on all the strings in between, and you'll be absolutely solid on your tuning. Even with crap tuners, guitars in my experience are mostly out of tune for 2 main reasons, or people feel they're out of tune for 2 reasons. One is that the first fret action is wrong, it's too high, and so the guitar will never sound in tune because your fretted notes down here are always out of tune with your open notes. That's an amazingly big common occurrence. And the second one is that you haven't taken the stretch out of the strings. And this can go on releasing its slack for weeks. So that falls nicely into tune, and just looking at it now, it's lightning fast. All right, so we've done one stretching. Don't forget as well, while you're here, stretch these bits. Right, they'll hold slack as well. Obviously, you've been be conscious of what you're doing. You have a potential to break strings, and it will cost if you do. So you don't want to go too crazy, especially when if and when the string goes over a sharp edge. That's more a case with Les Paul copies, but just be careful. So wherever there's string, take the slack out of it, and then in this case we go back over it whilst, I don't know, listening to your favourite music or doing something else, talking to your friends or family, whatever. Just mindlessly go up and down the strings, and 5 minutes or 10 minutes of doing this now will give you a much better experience later. And if you're in the business of doing up and selling guitars, or even just selling them, putting new strings on and selling your favourite guitar that you've had all your life, whatever, when you put new strings on it, spend 10 to 15 minutes doing exactly this, because when it arrives in a box at the other end, often it's not in tune because you can't control what happens to the tuners. It might get squashed as you're putting it into kind of bubble wrap or whatever. But the one thing you want is for the person to put the thing into tune, or tune it up on their machine, their electronic tuner once, and have it stay in tune. That's the best impression you can give. See how much came out of that? So we're going to do it again, and what we'll find is this time the amount of stretch, or the detuning, will be, the decrease in the pitch will be much less this time. But you can see that all of that detuning that's happening and the stretch that we're actually getting, if you weren't doing it manually this way, that would be coming out every time you did a big bend. And you know, a lot of people might do one or two bends in a song, so you might play, tune it up, think you've got it in tune, play a song, hit one bend, damn, got to tune it for the next song. Then you go and play another song, maybe bend one note, damn, it's out of tune again, got to do it again. And you might find that you'll be doing that for a couple of days. And in fact, most of the guitars that come in here, including this one, I was able to put this out of tune very, very quickly, because there's still so much residual stretch left in the strings. Even though Mike, with no offence, has probably played it for ages, it's just the fact that he might not have still got all the stretch out of the strings. So this one little activity is a dead cheap way of improving your experience. Close now. So we've done 3 of those bends, or stretches, sorry. Now we've got the guitar in. Oh my god. So low. So now what I'd do is I would put some big bends on everything. Close. Oh, and then one final thing, I would just kind of holding it gently, I don't know why, but I do, kind of, so it doesn't just freely pull. I'm just giving it some upward stretch, which is one thing we haven't kind of done in all of that mix. Again, you've got to just be sensitive, or got to feel your way through this so that you don't whack it so hard that it snaps. They're pretty strong things there. So I'm trying to take out every bit of stretch now. So I've done 3 hand stretchings, a set of bends and a long pull. Pretty on now. Right, one of the things I didn't do, that I now remember, is I'm just going to take the back off here a minute and give this a spray with some air and some contact cleaner, because it's a bit on the crackly side, possibly because Mike hasn't used it, caught it by his own admission, hasn't used it much. Never know, he might want to sell it to me. Yeah, so we're just going to get under here and give it first the air, then the contact cleaner. I'm sure we will get, let's get a different screwdriver head for this fella. I'm sure we'll get a better, much less crackly operation out of it. But we're pretty much close to it. We're going to check the intonation using a tuner and the tuner and the harmonics. So everything, it looks all well connected, everything's solidly in place. Simple arrangement, 5-position switch, volume pot, tone pot, tidy wires, but doesn't change the fact that it's suffering a little bit from dust. Certainly some dust in the switch, probably some in the contacts, in the pots as well. Give it as much of a, it's got some solvent bubbling away there. We'll give it as much as oh, did that make that come out? Wow. Oh, I can't believe it. Let's see. No, I don't think so. I think I'm imagining that. Fire a bit in here. Really, that's just getting rid of dust. And then we don't want WD-40, we do want DP-60. And we'll fire a bit into the switch this way and a little bit under the pots this way. Okay, now that does sit there for a minute and we don't want to spill it because it may well be a solvent. No, it doesn't, but we can just, it will evaporate, but we can help it on its way with a bit of cloth. Okay, away you go. Okay, so that's that taken care of, and all that remains now is the intonation setting, which we will do next. So that's a nice thing about working on people's guitars. You never know if they ever come to sell them. You know what you've done, and you can sort of have a first, hopefully have a first dibs at it. But I think chances are that having done this now, Mike will want to play this more. Although it doesn't have the, or it may have a tremolo arm for it. It's not going to perform the same way as the trem on his other Ibanez's, which is pretty spectacular for the old dives and so on. I'm just going to clean that off the surface there. Well, we've got some of the solvent that came through, or the propellant I should say, not solvent, that's one word. There we go. Beautiful. Right, let me just plug it in, we'll just check the cracklingness of that, and also, while I'm at it, I'll grab hold of our tuner device just for doing the intonation. Now the intonation on this, I'm not sure. I think we have to have a feeling we may have to, if we need to do it, we have to slacken these off, which I am hoping. I'm hoping it doesn't push. It's an interesting thing. There's a spring to the outside. I wonder if that's correct. There's a spring to the outside, and the I wonder why the spring is on the outside. I'm not sure. I've not seen one of these before, so we'll discover together. Now, where's my tuner? Come on. I don't want the photos, I want the tuner. Oh my goodness. Please iPhone, do what you're told. There it is. I don't know if you can see. That's what we're looking at. Tuner. Let's get a strap. This has come with locking strap, locking thingies. Make sure it doesn't fall on the floor. It's such a beautiful guitar. It makes sense. Now I'm hoping, I know it's a coward's way, but I'm really hoping that the intonation is right on this, because I don't really want to be undoing those saddles. Okay, so we went from a 3mm, over 3mm action down to 1.5. So it's quite a big change on a guitar, on any guitar, but one like this is okay. Worked in. Difficult to get inside pots, that's the problem. The switch is clean, so it's volume, but it's still a bit scratchy on the tone, probably because it never gets used. That's one of the problems. Stability is pretty good. I'm just going to stretch it a little bit more. In tune according to the tuner, you know, that thing. So the idea about intonation is that each string has to be tuned or set to an individual length for this neck. The neck has a notional scale length, which is where the bridge is, kind of guides where the bridge is placed, and also in the manufacturer of the neck decides or tells the manufacturer how to or the formula by which the frets are spaced and how quickly they come together. But when in practice, even though there's that notional scale length where the bridge, a kind of imaginary line down the bridge, each string has to be its own length to match perfectly with this neck. And the way we find that out is, thankfully, not by measuring it with a ruler, because that would be such a pain. It's by using tuning. So we tune to the harmonic on any string. I'm going to start with the A, for example. Fret fretted should be the same note as the harmonic on the 12th. It's close, and people press with different amount of variation of strength. It's very difficult to kind of get that exactly. Just looking at the position of this, it's quite high. Okay. The nice thing about this is you can see, I'll give you an example of how the gravity also affects guitars. So that's just flat of A. Right, watch me ping it, watch the picture. Sharp of A. Flat, even flatter. See that? So that's you're seeing in note form or in sonic form the effect of gravity. That's why, of course, your reference point is the guitar in playing position. It's quite tuned yet, but anyway. But yeah, as long as it doesn't mean you have to do everything in this position, but you have to be conscious that the guitar will behave differently in this position, and therefore it will affect the tuning differently. You need to be aware of that, and that's a visual demonstration of it. Face down. It's slackening the string because the neck is bending forward under gravity. In the hanging position, close to being in tune. On its back, slightly sharp because the neck is pulling down and tightening the string over the fingerboard. So there you go. Nice little demo for you. So there's my tune. I'm going to try the next one. Close, very close. I think I'll get away with this. That's good. Even when you press down, watch, let's say I'm tuning. So I get the B, and I lean my hand on the backwards, forwards, changes. That's good. Much as I'd like to ignore it, I'm going to do a little tweak here because it's not exactly spot on, and I'd like to not shy away from having a go at this, even though I don't quite know how this bridge works. But hey, so if I find the right Allen key to begin with, we've got two different ones going on here. That's not the right one. Is it the right one? Yeah, it's turning, but it feels too big. Oops, look, yeah, too big. Let's pull another one. So we need a smaller one for the front and a bigger one for the top, back. Let's see what happens. Okay, so theoretically, let's try the top E. E, I said. That one's on, so I'm not going to mess with that one. Detune it a bit. It's close as well. I need better volume. Come on, sharper tone, please. I want to hear this. On. That's on. As it's on. Extra pulling for any more slack out of here. I think we're on actually, I don't need to adjust this. It's variable depending on how you press the notes, but okay. say the only one that's even tiny bit out is the E. It's not worth even doing. Beautiful, man. That is absolutely a gorgeous guitar. Right, there you go, Mike. Almost perfect in every way. I think this is a lovely guitar. It's now become that much smoother to play, and do that up. And I think you're going to notice the difference on this. You know, as I said, 1.6 millimeters different at the last fret, and about 0.4 down here. But that's a nice compromise. Stopping at about 0.4 feels really, really nice. That might be my new standard for all I know. But there you go. That's the Ibanez SA series in a lovely sunburst orange red finish with a maple cap on top, and a kind of bespoke Ibanez tremolo bridge, which has not really been used in this configuration, and a lovely wizardy neck, I think it is. But what a beaut. Mike, if you're looking to sell this one, give me a shout, because I think this is beautiful. This starts to do it for me, and it has a nice balance of weight too, which the mahogany one that I tried out, similar, pretty much the same shape, just was a little thinner on the body, and it was almost, well, it wasn't almost, it was too thin, and it ended up neck heavy, and I couldn't live with it. But this is a lovely guitar, so highly recommended. Beautiful, pleasure to work on. So see you for another Reloved guitar shortly, and thanks for spending time with me in the shed.